new home or a used home. Yeah, I'm just throwing out things because obviously we're not doing question and answer period, but at least maybe it'll turn on some lights. I don't know. That's what I thought I would do here. But water is a big one for me. The pressure here has always been horrible. I mean, I can't even get City Hall to find my water shut off. If I ever have a water leak in my home, we have yet to find where that is in this house because it's not where it says it is and stuff like that. The septic runoff is another one. The noise and the mess from this lot and how long it'll take to build all this, and just that one house beside me, every day I'm lucky enough to have a pool in my backyard, and the whole summer was just every day I went through water like crazy because we'd be tracking mud in because the amount of dust from the tracking construction in, out, dirt in, out, slinging rocks and landfill coming in or landfill going out, the amount of dust and I like to keep my place clean. I spend a ton of money on my place. I've done so many renovations. Just those factors alone, turn me right off because I know it's going to be a long time. That was one home. This is 19.
Mr. Pickett, I'm just going to give you about a 30-second warning before
you're going to. Sure. Yeah, I'm trying to list them all off because I wrote some down and I'm trying to be, as efficient as possible. Again, so the home value, and just the road that they've just paved, what's that going to look like when they're done? All of the above. The biggest concerns again are I'm against it pretty much for all these concerns and for what I've seen explained. It just it feels like it's just going to happen and we're not going to have a say. That's my concern. And considering I'm living across the street, I think I should have a say, and it should be heard.
Good. Well, I thank you very much for your comments. I'll now open it up. Anybody else wanting to make comments?
John, I'm sorry, I don't know how to get myself in here. It's Trudy Schneider.
Sorry. Okay.
I'm sorry, I don't know how to get myself on the list here. I just have a concern that our property is listed at 2314 on the subdivision map. And I understood you to say that the people who are directly involved in the neighborhood would be notified. Now, as you know, I try to keep my nose to the grindstone here and keep abreast. So I did know, but I just need that changed. I need to know that our communication is going to be good and that I'm not going to miss out on something because I'm not reading every single thing. Because I would like to have had something in my mailbox the way some of our neighbors did about the hearing tonight. Just my comment. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. Is there any further comments?
Hello.
Yes.
John, it's Will Crocker. I'm at 2485 Leggett Drive, just down the street from Pauline and Doug today.
Okay.
My question regarding the proposed change here tonight is just if Mayor and Council have thought about the potential impact on the Muckel and the Cameron families and
this. Sorry, Mr. Crocker, the Bellaterra is not going to be talked about this evening. It's been withdrawn. So we're just talking about the Cordovato development.
My apologies. Thank you.
Okay. I'll just open it up. Any further people wanting to speak on specifically the Cordovato proposal that's in front of us tonight?
Yeah, it's Doug again.
Okay, let me just go through. That was the second time, so now I'll open up for the third time. Mr. Richardson, go ahead, please.
I think this is my second time, not my third time, but okay. Back when this came forward like a year and a bit ago, I also suggested that the CAC was low compared to infill. There is no way that you can have a CAC, which is 50% of the list, which is like 493 or whatever it happens to be, compared to infill, which is 150K per lot. The CAC for this thing should be, if you're taking 50% of the list, somewhere on $1.2, $1.3 million. So something's not right there. Anyway,
good.
Cheers.
Thank you. I have Marilee, the floor is yours. Oh, if you're muted right now, sorry. There you
Hi,
go.
is that better? Is that
Yep.
better? Thank you. I'm Paul John, and I would like just to ask a quick question. Is this development going to be a clear cut, just like Bellaterra was?
This is not a question and
going-
answer period. We just here to provide comments, to listen to
Well,
comments.
could you make a comment about that then?
I cannot, sorry.
We have no plan of whether it's going to be?
Do you have any further comments on this subdivision? We're in a public hearing right now.
Oh, I thought you were wanting some questions. Sorry.
No, sorry. Okay. Okay, then I'll move on to Dr. Settergreen.
Thank you again. Since questions are not permitted, I'd like to make a couple of observations. The developers of the Anmore South properties are
We are
very-
not here to discuss the Anmore South properties either, Dr. Settergreen. This is specific public hearing to the Corvado redevelopment.
I apologize. Thank you very much.
I will go to Doug. Do you want to speak again? Or did you just leave your hand up?
I thought once you spoke, your hand went down. So no, I
Sorry.
didn't want to speak
Okay.
again. Sorry about that.
Okay, no problem. We're all working through this new era of Zoom. So I don't see any further hands up. So I'm going to just call it one final time as outlined in the public hearing. Anybody wanting to speak further after third reading? Seeing none, then I will close third meeting. Thank you, everybody. And we will now close the public hearing. Thank you very much.
In relation to process, we will be staying on the same link to move into our regular council meeting, which is scheduled to be called to order immediately following the closing of the public hearing. So we'll just give a moment or two for everybody to reset, and then we'll move forward into the regular council meeting. Thank you.
Okay, is council, are they ready? Councillor Trowbridge, are you there? Councillor Weberink? Unfortunately, I can't see any of them, so I'm sorry.
Councillor Weverink and Councillor Trowbridge and Councillor Laidler are here. I believe we're just waiting. Oh, and there's Councillor Creer as well. We're
Okay.
all present and accounted for, Mayor McEwen.
And is Ms. Elric there, our corporate secretary?
She certainly is, yes.
Okay, can I get a thumbs up that we're ready to start the regular council meeting?
I think we are good to go.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for joining us tonight for our regular council meeting. We just finished up with our public hearing. I just wanted to say before we get into the agenda, I have a few words to say. On behalf of council in the village of Anmore, our deepest condolences go to the Indigenous peoples who are grieving and also caring for their elders after the heartbreaking news from this week. There are no adequate words we can use to describe a shared horror and profound sadness after children's remains were discovered at a former residential school. But I believe two of the most important words being expressed are that these children were known and remembered. Because the survivors of the residential schools and their communities have always known that children disappeared from the residential schools were never heard from again. Discovery of these children this week is a reminder that we have neighbors across this province and across Canada who lived this loss. They survived the travesty of residential schools. The truth continues to come out, and the work needed for reconciliation remains a necessity. We can't change the past. I wish we could. But I believe it's important to learn from the past and make changes today to help do better both today and in the future. Here and now, we are exceedingly saddened by this tragedy. We honor the survivors, and we are reaching out to the Indigenous peoples to say how sorry we are for their loss. I now call to order the regular council meeting of June 1st, 2021. With the cancellation of the Bellaterra public hearing, we will also be, that the agenda be I will be asking that the agenda be approved as amended, removing 9B Bellaterra. With that being said, could I get someone to move the amended agenda? Moved, seconded. See none, all those in favor? Carried unanimously. Ms. Halliwell, unfortunately, I only see Councillor Laidler right now. I don't, I'm trying to figure out how to get everybody from council.
If you're on a desktop on the top right-hand side, is your view showing as gallery right now?
Okay. That's better. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. That's okay. Now we have public input. Public is permitted to provide comments to council on any item shown on this meeting agenda. A 2-minute time limit applies to speakers, but unfortunately no input will be permitted with respect to items 9A and B, as we already had talked, as the public hearing which preceded this meeting, and council may not receive any further information following the closed public hearing. So I will open it up to public hearing for anybody that has anything to say in regards to today's agenda. Okay, not seeing anybody, then we're going to, we have 2 delegations. We have Corporal Neil Romer from the RCMP is going to be here to provide a policing update for the village of Anmore. Councillor Romer, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. I'm glad to be here and join you folks. Just to give you an assessment of what happened in 2020 with respect to police service levels and calls for service in 2020. Just a couple of comments about the crime statistics that I'm about to relay. First off, in preparing this year's report, I'm not including any of the calls that were occurring at Bunsen Lake in 2020. These statistics are for Anmore alone. The second part of that is just in terms of the calls for service, made a couple of changes in terms of what I'm reporting on. Calls for service are not necessarily reflective of criminal offenses. And so what I've done is organized it into 3 different categories: property crimes, offenses against people, or what we call person offenses, and then a catch-all other category. In terms of this year, in 2020, property crimes certainly did rise compared to 2019. In terms of the total number, there was approximately a 100% increase over 2019 with respect to property crime. We did have a near doubling, or basically a doubling, of the break-and enters, and theft from auto went from a very low level to a very high level for Anmore, from 1 to 14. So on average, Anmore experiences, roughly speaking, about 8 to 10 of the autos. And if you can just see on your screen, that's the report that I passed along to the village. And those theft from autos certainly are over what we would expect for Anmore. That was an increase certainly towards the end of the year. In the second half of 2020, there was certainly more theft from auto than we expected. With respect to the others, it is kind of within the normal range of what we'd expect for Anmore. In comparing 2019 to 2020, we do go from 2019, which was a very good year in terms of crime levels, and 2020 certainly did see an increase and was probably on the higher side of what we would expect for Anmore. Despite all of that, Anmore does remain a very safe community. With respect to person offenses or offenses against people, those have remained quite static for a number of years, ranging from approximately 10 to 12 every year. And those are the offenses that typically involve assaults or uttering threats, things that people obviously get very concerned about with respect to their safety, but those have remained very static. One of the things that did change from 2019 to 2020 was the number of collisions. It went from 1 to 9, so that's quite an increase. Again, 2019 seems to have been a very good year for that. 2020, and in being able to review those collisions, none of them were very serious. In terms of the causal factors, speed wasn't a causal factor in any of those collisions. The most common type was rear end collisions, typically caused by people not paying attention or focusing on electronic device perhaps. And the others were typical minor collisions of weather related, or there was a hit and run that did property damage. So in terms of the collisions, that's kind of what 2020 looked like. And other calls for service, I just noted them. There's a bylaws and suspicious persons, vehicles, or occurrences. Those went down a little bit from 2020, from 2019. So that's kind of what it looked like for the year. With respect, I just make note that 2018, the number of break-in enters that happened in 2018 was 9. That's the same number that happened in 2020. And theft from auto in 2018 was 8. So that's kind of the normal range, just to give an idea of what typically happens in Anmore. And with that, I welcome any comments or questions.
Good. Well, thank you very much. Any questions from council? Sorry, I can't see anybody right now because we have the name or the screen being shared.
Councillor Weberink, I think, wanted to ask a question, and I'll just stop sharing the screen as well.
Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Weberink.
Thanks for your presentation, Corporal Romer. Would you say you guys have been spending more time in the village in 2020 or less compared to 2019?
Well, definitely less, in the sense that 2020 I was off duty for much of 2020. So for the majority of the year, there were only 2 people as opposed to 3 people in the section. We did have some overtime money was spent to increase our presence. And also we had basically a summertime, what we call a reserve constable, who joined the unit for the summertime. So in that sense, yes, there were resource issues that probably contributed to less of a presence in 2020 than we would want. However, it is difficult to tie our presence to crime rates. Obviously, one would think that our presence does influence these events, but that's not necessarily the case in my experience.
Yeah, I guess we are fairly remote, so yeah, I wonder how much it actually deters people. But you know, if the crime is coming from within, it may actually. You never know.
Typically,
your source.
Sorry to interrupt. Typically speaking, property crime is something that is happening. People coming into the community and doing their thing, and then leaving the community. Person offenses, and because there's such a small number, I'm able to take a look at the files that are involved there. And person offenses are typically people that are known to each other within the community. And so that's not something that people are coming into the community and committing those kind of crimes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I see no further questions or queries. And thank you for joining us this evening. Much appreciated.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, good. Okay, I've got my next delegation is Mr. Neil Lyons, a Ravenswood resident. So Mr. Lyons, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yeah.
Sorry, 1 second, please. Okay, very good. Okay, good evening, Mayor McEwen and City Councilors. My name is Neil Lyons and I live at 1024 Ravenswood Drive. Thank you very much for providing us an opportunity to speak to you tonight. My wife Loretta and I am here on behalf of the residents of Ravenswood Drive to present to Council our petition requesting the relocation of the garbage bin, which was placed on the street on April 27th, 2021. Here are the facts as we know them. The garbage bin was placed on the street without notification or any prior consultation with the residents. The garbage bin was initially placed in a manner that posed significant risk to pedestrians being hit by cars backing out of a driveway. In addition, The bin was placed on a fire access right-of-way, thereby reducing the ability to access a fire hydrant located in the fire lane. Furthermore, it does not appear that the city conducted a safety or hazard assessment prior to the placement of the bin. Residents have additional concerns that the smell from the bin will attract bears, coyotes, rodents, etc. Upon the request of the residents, the city was not able to provide evidence of any complaints specifically relating to the right-of-way. When approached to meet to discuss the litter issues and the potential to relocate the garbage bin, the village and some elected officials who were contacted were unwilling to meet with the stakeholders. In conclusion, to date, the residents are not aware of any significant litter issues associated with this pathway. Additionally, the residents are prepared to maintain and clean up any litter along the pathway at no cost to the city. We hope you've had an opportunity to view the video that was submitted as it further evidences that there is no litter issues on the said pathway. So I will go to some of the remedies which have been put forward by the various residents who have signed the petition. The first being, residents have noticed litter by the mailbox across from the village hall. This might be a more appropriate placement and can also be accessed by dog walkers and lake traffic. Another location could be the bus stop located on Sunnyside at the village hall. You could place the bin closer to the elementary school where litter tends to collect. You could replace a small garbage can by the bus stop in front of the fire hall and replace it with the bin. You could move the bin to behind the fire hydrant at the rear of 1024 and 1028 Ravenswood Drive. Both the adjacent property holders are agreeable to be moved down to the end of the pathway. You could form a committee that may identify appropriate garbage bin placements and liaison with residents who might be impacted. You could also start a street and path resident litter watch program similar to being used in other cities such as Port Moody. Or lastly, the bin could be added to the Spirit Park, as it has been observed that the existing bin overflows on the weekend. I would now like to ask if council has any questions at this time with regards to the petition.
No? Okay, Mr. Lyons, is that the end of your delegation then?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. We will move on then. I just wanted to thank you for your presentation. As I had commented previously, council sets policy and direction and doesn't get involved in the administrative implementation. So I think your request would be best to be served to contact staff with some of the solutions and some of the problems that you've seen. So we'll move on now to minutes of the regular council meeting held on May 18th, 2021. Ms. Elrick.
Thank you. The recommendation would be that the minutes of the regular council meeting held on May 18th, 2021 be adopted as circulated.
Could I get someone to move those minutes? Moved, seconded. Any discussion? See none. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Do we have any business arising from those minutes? No? Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Any council member who wishes to remove an item for further discussion may do so at this time. Ms. Elrick, or sorry, Ms. Cryer, or Councilor Cryer.
Thanks, Mayor McEwen. I'd like to remove item 7A, School District 43 mental health card.
Okay. Councilor Lader, were you wanting to move something? No? Oh, your microphone is new.
No, I didn't want anything removed from the agenda.
Okay, perfect. Okay, well then, with that, let's a recommendation that the remaining consent agenda be adopted. Could I get someone to move that? Moved, seconded. Any discussion? See none. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. We now have 7A, School District 43 mental health card. The recommendation would read. Ms. Elrick.
Recommendation would read that council received the communication dated May 14th, 2021 from School District 43 regarding mental health card.
Could I get someone to move it and second it before moved, seconded? Okay, and now moving on to Councilor Cryer.
Thanks, Mayor McEwen. Thanks, Ms. Elrick. I just wanted to speak briefly in full support of this. it's very important to address mental health issues early. And if we can do that at the school level, I think that would be a good start. I also feel that it is very intimidating to make a call for what normally would just need a mental health social worker intervention. If an RCMP officer shows up in full tactical gear, it's a little alarming. And I believe it also prevents people from calling in more often. So I fully support this, and I hope that council does as well. I would also request that I be the representative at the table. If there are some meetings or any tasks that come out of this, I would welcome an opportunity to take that on.
Good. Well, thank you very much. Any further comments on this? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Okay, we have legislative reports. 9A zoning bylaw amendment 647-2021, 2307 Sunnyside Route, Corvado. Ms. Ulrich.
Thank you. So following the public hearing, the council may choose to give third reading and also adopt, if they wish, the zoning bylaw. So I do have recommendation that council give third reading to Anmore zoning amendment bylaw 647-2021. And if council additionally would like to consider adoption, we can make that amendment.
Do I get someone to move that? Moved, seconded. I'll open up now for discussion. Councillor Weber.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad this has finally gotten to this point. I mean, we've been talking about this for a long time. I think it's, you know, I think we've gone back and forth enough on it. I'm happy with where it sits now. I know the tree retention is always an issue. I think what people have to realize is what we're trying to do with CDs is acquire trees for the village, acquire land. I mean, those decisions will be made by future councils as to what will be done with that land, but for the moment, you know, we have those trees preserved. All the lots are still subject to tree bylaws, so there is replanting requirements if trees are removed. I think what we have to do is visualize these subdivisions when they're complete. Unfortunately, nothing seems to be built quickly in Anmore, and these subdivisions are sort of in a half-built state for a long time. I can understand that might be frustrating to some people, but I think the bigger picture is we're a little bit more efficient with our land, and I think we're actually more respectful of nature by saving larger tracts. So I'm happy to move this along. That's all I have.
Good. Any other further questions or comments? Councillor Trowbridge.
Similar to Councillor Wabrink, I mean, you know, I think most of us, but certainly I am in favor of CD zones because we have some control, and in CD zones, retention of trees is greater than in RS1 single acre properties where the owners of the property are only required to give us 5% park dedication. In CD zone, it's a much larger dedication, and the 20% tree retention is still retained. So CD zones typically protect trees, they don't remove trees, but like all of our homes, trees are going to come down to build buildings. So I think Councillor Wavering makes a good point that when product doesn't sell and things stay static, it can look barren for a while before things go up and get filled in.
Any further comments? I've got a couple I wanted just to say, but I just, no. Okay, a couple of the questions that came up during the public hearing that I just wanted to address. Dr. Settergreen made a comment about, do we have any or do I have any interest whatsoever in the subject party? As Dr. Settergreen and former councillor should know, we actually studied this when he was on council, this subdivision and its different reiterations many, many years ago. And as well, he can certainly look at my public disclosure thing to see if I have any interest in that. So I found that question kind of interesting. Concerned about noise and nuisance during construction. Please, we always want people to be good neighbors when they are building and constructing. With this property, this specific property, the construction will be in off of the road, fairly substantial according to the plans that we are looking at right now. So I'm hoping it's not going to be right next. And I do think that if you do have any further concerns about any nuisances and stuff like that regarding construction, please bring them to the village hall's attention, and we will rectify them. We have specific building hours that we want to deal with and that. And then there was another comment about the CAC comparison to infill, which again, we use the same company, JP Rollout, to do the analysis on this. And this was also vetted through our APC, which thought that this was a very good deal. With CACs, it's not always just about the money, it's also about the land. We're getting over 30, I believe 35% of this is going to retain natural park as well. We also are getting a fairly significant sliver that Sunnyside Road actually infringes upon this piece of property that we've been using for quite some time. So the CAC comparison dollars to dollars is not a fair comparison. You have to throw in the amount of the land, and I would strongly suggest, as the APC commented when they did review this, that this was a much superior deal to infill at the $150,000 per lot being created. So those are just a few of the questions that I had that were there. Any other council questions before I go? Councillor Trowbridge.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I was assuming that at question period, Dr. Settergreen would have to ask his question again, but given that you addressed it, I'll address it so that there's no speculation here. Given that I don't even personally know the owners of the property, the answer to your question is no, of course, I have no pecuniary interest, nor do I stand to gain anything. I find it strange that you would single me out, and I'd love to speak to you offline later and find out why you would even ask that question. Thanks.
Good. Thank you. See no further questions, then I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Now, Ms. Elrick, you have a subsequent one to give it final reading?
Sure. If council would like to consider this evening that council adopt Anmore zoning amendment bylaw number 647, 2021.
Could I get someone to move it? Moved, seconded. Any discussions on final fourth reading and adoption? No? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. And I just wanted to thanks for the patience of the proponent. This was put off a few months ago because of some technical issues that we had in regards to this, that Mr. Boyd was able, as manager of development services, was able to realign. So I just wanted to thanks for the patience. And again, this has been in the works for almost 14 years, this development. So it's nice to get it behind us. I'll now move on to 9C, the 2345 Sunnyside Road rezoning application, an introductory report dated May 27th, 2021 from Mr. Boyd, Manager of Development Services attached. Mr. Boyd. And there we go.
There we go. Sorry, just catching up on the minutes here. So thank you, Kieran. So we've had an introductory report on the table here in regards to infill development for 2345 Sunnyside Road. This is adjacent to the Corvados development. Oh, sorry. Councillor Laidler.
Councillor Laidler. We can't hear you, sir. Councillor, if you could just take your mic off.
I'd like to recuse myself at this time.
Okay, thank you. You're going to have to, Councillor Laidler, you'll have to leave the room. Yeah. Okay, sorry, Mr. Boyd, if you could continue.
No problems. Yeah, so there's a report on the table here regarding 2345 Sunnyside Road. This is in regards to infill development. The proponents come forward requesting an infill development and asking for an additional 2 lots, so in total 3 lots from the 1 lot he has currently. In review of the policy of infill, staff are requesting a bit of information from council in regards to how they view the 2 additional lots, as past conversations with the Mayor's Task Force indicated that it should only be 1 additional lot allowed through infill. And so the policy has a little bit of ambiguity when it comes to 1.5 to 2 acre lots. So I'm looking for some clarification from council on how to proceed with this type of rezoning.
Councillor Trowbridge.
Yeah, I was on with Councillor Wavering. I was on the original task force, so I am familiar with all of it. Chris, the intent of infill from its inception was intended to create one additional lot. The vehicle for creating multiple lots that are smaller than an acre rather is a CD zone. So I don't know if that answers it.
Any other, Councillor Weber?
Yeah, I can echo what Councillor Trowbridge said. I mean, it was a very contentious issue about infill, and the idea was gentle densification, a lot here, a lot there. So the intent was to take a parcel between 1 and 2 acres, and if you wanted to get another lot out of it, you could. And I would fully expect people to develop it in such a way that in 10 years, one of the lots they create, they may ask to do it again, which sort of keeps in the theme of gentle densification. It is a rezoning. I mean, it's council's purview to say no to any rezoning. But yeah, usually a bigger property with multiple smaller lots, that we would consider that a CD, and we would certainly look at that, but not under the infill policy. That was always the intent. And if that language needs to be improved just to make it clear for people, I wouldn't be opposed to that.
Good. Any other questions, comments? Okay, Mr. Boyd, I don't see any sort of recommendation or anything, so it's just or Ms. Elrick, sorry.
Sorry, there is a staff recommendation if you'd like me to read it out.
Sure.
The recommendation would be that council direct staff to communicate to the applicant that there is not support for 2 additional lot rezoning as part of the infill development policy, and that consideration would be given to a rezoning application that included 1 additional lot. And further, that council direct staff to update the infill development policy number 61 and zoning bylaw to incorporate explicit information regarding the intent of infill development within Anmore when the zoning bylaw is presented with additional proposed changes in the fall.
Okay. Can I get someone to move that? Moved, seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, carried unanimously. If we could please invite Councillor Laidler back. Councillor Laidler, can you hear me? Are you able to hear me, sir? Councillor Laidler, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I'm back.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. We're now going to move on to new business 11A, request for funding for a flat deck trailer. Report dated May 27th, 2021 from Ms. Halliwell, our Chief Administrative Officer, is attached. Ms. Halliwell.
Thank you, Mayor McEwen. I'm here on behalf of our Public Works Operations Superintendent, Lance Fortier, tonight. And following the adoption of the 5-year financial plan, and as staff were working to procure the various pieces of equipment that were included as part of that budget, it was determined that, as we've seen in many other areas, there was a significant cost increase to the flat deck trailer that had been included within the budget. So originally the budget, as per the 5-year financial plan, was for $6,000 to purchase a flat deck trailer to allow for equipment to be moved throughout the village. And we found that with the recent escalation in costs associated with COVID-19, we're requiring an additional $2,400 in order to purchase the preferred flat deck. So the recommendation is that council approve additional funds of $2,400 in order to purchase the preferred flat deck trailer, and that the additional funds be allocated from the capital reserve.
Okay, someone to move that? Moved, second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, carried unanimously. Okay, and then 11B, the 2021 Lgma Conference. Ms. Halliwell.
Thank you. So this is in line with past council requests for any training and development for the CAO to come through council for approval. So today we're requesting, I'm requesting authorization to register for the virtual Local Government Management Association Annual Conference. And there's a benefit this year as well, as they're opening up the conference to additional attendees for for an extra $100 on registration. And Miss Elric would certainly stand to benefit from attending that virtual conference as well, which is being held on the 16th and 17th of June. So there's a recommendation on the agenda, which I'm just scrolling back up to. If council so wishes for us to attend, and that is that council authorize the CAO to register for the 2021 Lgma Conference for a cost of $750, which includes CAO registration of $650 plus one additional staff member of $100.
Someone to move that? Move seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Halliwell.
Thank you.
We have, I guess, move on to the mayor's report. Just a few things. Hopefully some of you saw that I am involved in the mayor's challenge for immunization with Dr. Lee from the Fraser Valley Health. We are working with Belcarra and Port Moody to hopefully get our immunization rate up to closer to 80%. We are doing fairly well right now. I think we're in the lower 70s from what I've been told of first shot immunization. May 26th, I participated in the Tri-City Chamber Coffee Talk with the mayor. Spent an hour discussing a lot of questions regarding Anmore and it's our role in the Tri-Cities. May 28th, I participated in the Burrard Inlet Mayor's Forum hosted by the Port of Vancouver. I brought up, and a lot of discussion was what ensued regarding the future possibilities of Burrard Thermal. I can tell everybody that the port is very interested in this parcel of land. And as we know, the port can trump municipal bylaws as well as provincial bylaws when it's in the greater good of the nation. So they are very interested in this and they see a lot of potential there. Yesterday, I attended and spoke at the Anti-Asian Hate Rally at Lafarge Lake with our very own Celia Chang, who is a resident. It was a great, Mayor Stewart was there as well as members of the school district in that. It was a great thing to bring awareness of the anti-hate movement that's going on right now. I also wanted to talk and have a couple of questions that I had towards, one is our Chris Boyd, who's our Director of Development Services, about respraying of the grass along Sunnyside Road. I'm hearing from a few people that it never took. So hopefully we can get the contractor to come back and honor his commitment to get that nicely seeded. It's going to be really nice when it's all done. So you're shaking your head, and I've heard that that's going to happen next week. So perfect, thank you. And then the other one is that I'm quite concerned. This past Saturday we had great weather, and there was quite a traffic congestion that started to happen up along Alpine Road. Because of the new works that are along Sunnyside, cars aren't able to get off to the side and sort of just get staged for when the lake opens in the morning. So it started to cause an issue up Alpine Road. And I just wanted to make sure that Ms. Halliwell is aware of it and steps were being taken to make sure that that doesn't happen again. I also would talk this afternoon to our fire chief, Chief Sharp, and he was concerned there was a protest right out by the fire hall as well, which he was not involved with whatsoever. And he would certainly prefer that area stay clear of any protests or anything to enable the best flow of traffic as possible in case of an emergency. So we need to make sure that the fire department has access to the whole village during these challenging times. And I think that we're going to also have to work with Port Moody and the RCMP as well to make sure that we get, make sure that and BC Hydro to make sure that traffic gets flowing and we don't congest the north end of Anmore. So Ms. Halliwell, if you could take that away and please, make sure that we have something in place. I think this weekend the weather is not supposed to be as amazing as it's been the last few days, but it's something that we're going to have to be aware of in the coming weeks ahead. So that's all I have for the mayor's report. Anything, councillor's report? Councillor Wevering.
Yeah, just quickly. I think I spoke to you about it, Mayor McEwen, offline, about suggesting to Hydro that they just open the gates in the summer at 6 o'clock. If they have any extra resources, and maybe it just takes one more staff member for 2 hours, that traffic problem would go away because I can't see anybody lining up that early in the morning. I think it's the simplest solution. I would recommend that we write a letter to them suggesting that, and certainly make them aware that this is just an ongoing, constant problem. I mean, we take the heat for this, and it's not our lake. We don't really have a whole lot of control. And then just on the grass reseeding, I wonder if there's something wrong with that soil. I saw it posted somewhere that there's some strange mushrooms growing. So I was actually walking there the other day, and it's the truth. It looks like Mars. It's unbelievable that the strange growth in this coming out of this soil. So I don't know if it's just a seeding issue or we got some bad soil. But either way, it needs to be
Some
dealt.
bad dirt, Mr. Boyd.
It's actually the exact opposite. It's very fertile. That's why I have the mushroom.
Okay.
But in my ongoing theory on the hydro seed that went down, I think the machine was broken when they put it down, or the seed that they used was old.
Maybe.
Hence why there's next to no grass growing at all. Hydro seed normally will take literally on anything. You spread on concrete, it'll start growing on concrete.
Yeah.
Like it has enough nutrients in the bowl that's sprayed out with to germinate the seed. So such a lack of germination is really wrong.
Yeah. No, normally you're correct. Yeah. So anyway, I'm glad to hear that's being redone. That's all I have.
Good. Any other council reports? Councillor Cryer.
Thanks, Mayor McEwen. I just want to mention further to the Tri-Cities food security survey that went out probably a month or so ago. They will be hosting a town hall. So it's the Tri-Cities Food Security Assessment and Draft Action Plan that will be taking place via Zoom on June 23rd. And I have sent all of the information to Ms. Elric for it to be included in a Monday communication for anyone that's interested.
Good. Thank you. Councillor Laidler.
I understand that there's a group in Anmore that are opposed to the Ioko lands being developed. And I respect people's right to protest and discuss this issue. However, there's been quite a lot on social media that hinges, I think, on insults to members of council and is not acceptable. Somebody said palms are being greased. I find this grossly insulting. As a former member of the Vancouver Police Department, this is something I would not tolerate, and I will not tolerate it now. Such a comment has got no basis in fact on anyone in this council, and I defy anyone to prove it otherwise. All that's intended to do is undermine credibility of members of council and the mayor. I'm not prepared to stand for it. And if such a comment or similar comment appears again, I will be discussing with my lawyer whether it's possible to implement a charge of the legal options that I would have. Thank you.
Councillor Trowbridge.
Yes, I just want to speak briefly about the Parks and Rec. We've struck a new committee as all the other committees, and we've had our orientation led by Karen. Thank you, Karen. Really appreciate it. Unfortunately, one of our members couldn't attend the first meeting because they were ill. We're hoping not with COVID. They didn't indicate so, but hopefully they're recovering well. But it's a pretty exciting time. We are still awaiting, for those who don't know, waiting approval for some funding, hopefully, to potentially build a suspension bridge across Mossam Creek on some land that I'm going to be providing for the village. So I just would like everyone to keep their fingers crossed. There's nothing we can do to make the government give us anything, but we're due for a little bit of help. And the proposal's in. We've had some residents writing in support, which is helpful. And fingers crossed. Let's hope it happens.
Good. I think it's going to be an amazing opportunity, and I know your Parks Department was very, very much supportive in that, and so was When I met with Nellie Shin yesterday down at the anti-Asian hate thing, she was asking if we'd heard anything about it as well about any funding for the hub. So Ms. Halliwell, it may be worthwhile to reach out to her office as our local MP. She was asking if we had specific file numbers that she could then follow up with, but it may be worthwhile if we do that. So anyway, thank you for your work on the parks. I'll now move it over to the Chief Administrative Officer's report. Ms. Halliwell.
Thank you, Mayor McEwen. I might just take an opportunity and answer a couple of questions that came up through the councillor's report. And I'll start just with Councillor Trowbridge to let you know that I'm eagerly watching my email inbox because the indication was that the announcements were going to be made by the end of May. So any day, I'm hoping we'll hear some positive news. And in relation to the traffic concerns around visitors to Bunsen Lake, the one thing I just want to point out is we do have ongoing discussions on an annual basis, not only with BC Hydro, but over the past few years, Anmore has been leading a collaborative discussion with Metro Vancouver, the City of Port Moody, the Village of Belcarra, BC Hydro staff, as well as ourselves, to try to take a consistent approach to managing the traffic concerns that each one of those agencies and jurisdictions are facing. And through those discussions, we have proposed the idea of opening the gates earlier at the lake. However, in years past, not necessarily recent years, but certainly within the time frame of the current warden's tenure with BC Hydro and maintaining Bunsen Lake there, they have opened it earlier. And when they open it earlier, people just line up earlier. So it's not so much an issue of staffing, but that it just is moving the problem to a different time of the day based on their past experience. And further, it's certainly not our intent to be shuffling the problems that we saw with the lineups of cars along Sunnyside Road to other areas within the village. People every year get more and more creative with how they can try to circumvent some of our strategies, but we continually review those, and I'm working with Mr. Boyd as well as Mr. Gregg, our bylaw officer, and the additional bylaw officers that we now have on every weekend between now and September to update our strategies to hopefully avoid future issues, particularly along Alpine. So hopefully that helped a little bit with those questions. I just also wanted to advise that the property tax notices for this year have gone out. Our due date and the penalty scheme have not changed as they did last year for COVID. So property taxes are due on July 2nd, which is a Friday this year. And we are anticipating, based on the announcements from the provincial government this year, that we will be open to the public on that day to accept payment, although we would still encourage people to make their payments online if possible. And after that, we'll have a 5% penalty, and then our usual 5% in October as well, which is the standard for the village. And further to that, as I referenced, we have the announcement from the BC government about their 4-step restart plan. And so I've been developing a village hall reopening schedule and plan with staff, which is being finalized this week. We're looking forward to, I know I am, with us being able to be back in the office and working together again now that the work from home guidance has been lifted by the Provincial Health Officer. So as soon as we have the plans for reopening finalized, we'll certainly be distributing that information out to the community. And that's it.
Good. Well, thank you very much. We have some, move on to some information items, some minutes of the Parks and Rec, minutes of the Environment Committee, minutes of the Joint Environment Committee Public Safety Committee held on February 10th. I think that was the one with the conservation regarding bearware. Good to look through those. And then we have some general correspondence. And on the general correspondence, the second one, the communication from Hub Cycling dated May 27th, 2021 regarding Sassamat Greenway and safe active transportation corridor. And what they're proposing to do is to try and get some sort of, even by putting bollards or whatever along Ioko Road, just to protect some of the safety and up through to Sassamat Lake. And I'm just wondering, while that area isn't in our jurisdiction, I'm wondering if it would be appropriate if we were to send a letter of support to Hub in regards to that, because a lot of us travel along Ioko Road, and I do know that the dangers in some areas. That's a pretty narrow road, and when the cyclists get on it, it certainly, it sometimes will push them further out into the road. So I'm just wondering if that's an appropriate, Ms. Halliwell, or.
Sorry, struggling with my mute there. Yeah, absolutely. If council's interested in providing a response, we would be happy to do so on your behalf.
Any comments from council or Councillor Weberink?
Yeah, I totally support the idea. I think we have to look far into the future. I mean, cars are going to start to disappear. I think more and more people are interested in alternative ways of getting around, and I don't see why we can't do that in this area with proper cycling infrastructure. I've always thought that this suspension bridge would allow a really good connection that's a gentle grade to Port Moody. If you ride up the main road to the high school and then go into the trails to Anmore, really the only part that's a problem is going over the creek with that old bridge and trying to get up and down with your bike. But if that suspension bridge could go through, we would have our own cycling route, and it would be a great connection to the lake. But if we could have something down in towards Sassmat through Port Moody, I think it would be great for everybody in our community. So yeah, I totally support it.
I think as well, with the advent of the electric bike, it's certainly taking hills and distance out of the equation. So I think that adding a different form of transportation is a really wise thing to do. So would we need a resolution, Ms. Elrick, in regards to a letter, or just direction from council?
If council would like to provide a recommendation, then we can make sure that it's tracked. So if the recommendation would be that council send a letter of support to HUB regarding the Sassmat Greenway Safe Active Transportation Corridor.
Could I get someone to move that? Moved, seconded, open it for discussion. No further discussion. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, and then I'll now open up to public question period. Public is permitted to ask questions of council regarding any item village business. A 2-minute time limit applies to speakers. I've got, I'm going to go from left to right. So Mr. Lyons. If you could come off mute.
Actually, my wife had her hand up first.
Oh, okay. I'm just going left to right.
I'll go first. Yeah. Oh, hi, I'm Mayor Ewan and council. I'll introduce myself. I'm Loretta Lyons. I've never met any of you before. So I live at 1024 Ravenswood Drive, so I'm Neil's wife. And I just wanted to kind of go back. I'm sorry, I missed my cue when Neil represented the petition of all the residents on Ravenswood Drive. Basically, we're unhappy of where the bin has been placed. So I think, Mayor, you had said to Neil, correct me if I'm wrong, but you indicated that that we needed to contact administration. So I'm thinking that would be Miss Halliwell. Sorry if I didn't pronounce that right. And who else would that be? Lance?
I can jump in. Yes, Mrs. Lyons, it is Miss Halliwell. You did pronounce it correct. Yes,
Okay.
Thank you. So yes, from an operational standpoint, it would be myself and Mr. Fortier.
Oh, okay. Okay, so maybe if I could just kind of go back, I did send some emails to you, but prior to that, I was speaking with Lance when this all happened, and we did really do well in communicating of. At first, it was a safety issue because the bin was placed at the end of my driveway. And I always leave when the kids go to school. So I really had a hard time seeing the kids. So, there could have been an accident. That was my first concern. And then as Lance and I spoke later, he did say, come on, Mrs. Lyons, this is really an eyesore. And honestly, councillors, it is an eyesore. And Mayor Ewan, and I guess I was trying to. I always feel that I should reach out to people and try to do this.
Miss Lyons, Miss Lyons, we have 2 minutes, so I've got a bunch of other callers.
Well, anyway, so I guess what I'm saying is if we could perhaps meet again and come up with a place that we could be happy to have this bin. that where it's maybe needed more so than where it is right now. And I've lived here for 12 years and honestly, I've never seen any litter.
Good. Thank you very much. Okay, I'll move on to, I'm just going to go right across. And I know, Mr. Uvik, you had your hand up as well. Is it possible you could do the virtual one, because it's easier for me to keep track if possible? So I've got, and once you've asked your question, you could lower your hand as well. So I've got Neil Lyons now. Mr. Lyons? Okay, I'm going to move on then to Marilee's iPad.
Sorry.
Hi. Oh.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just having trouble with the Zoom.
Okay.
Here.
1 second.
Sorry, I'll help.
It's done.
No, you have to press it once. It's a little slow.
Okay, so I'm getting some help from some coaxing from my daughter here. So I think my wife is trying to ask a question. She didn't get the answer that which she was looking for. So I'd like to ask a question to Ms. Halliwell through you, Mayor McEwen. So are you saying, Ms. Halliwell, that we can arrange a meeting where we can discuss the options and possibly look at alternative sites for this garbage bin?
I mean, I'm certainly happy to receive further correspondence from you. I think in terms of the review of where the garbage bin has been placed, we've taken into consideration already the points that you had raised earlier in terms of concern with fire access and attractants. So I don't know that there's any further information that I can provide you to alleviate the concern. And also based on what Mrs. Lyons had said about her specific concern about line of sight, the bin has been relocated further down the trail to alleviate that concern.
Yes, I just wanted to point out that where the bin has been placed is where the gate would go. And can you tell us what happened to the gate?
I can't unfortunately answer that question tonight, but I can follow up.
Yes, there was half the gate is there and the other half the gate isn't, just to give you some material to work with here. So if you could look into that and maybe ask Lance, because right now the bin is placed where the other gate is supposed to be replaced, and we were told by Lance the gate would be replaced. So if you could look into that and we could have some correspondence maybe tomorrow on that.
Mr. Fortier is actually not in the office this week, but I can certainly follow up with him when he's back.
Okay, at your earliest convenience, please.
Good, thank you. I do know in my conversation today with the fire department, or Fire Chief Sharp, he had no issues whatsoever with its current placement and also accessibility to the gate. Apparently that fire hydrant was kind of interesting put there from an engineering point of view, but not a practicality point of view. So
yeah, for clarification,
we can't really blame Mr. Boyd because he wasn't around at that point in time.
So. No, for clarification on that, Mayor McEwen, that the fire hydrant is not there as a requirement for fire service. It was actually placed for looping purposes.
Yeah. Okay, I've got Mr. Uvik.
Okay, hi there. I had two questions for Mayor McEwen. One is, maybe you could explain to me the procedure. I wasn't sure that Mayor or Council was able to talk about a public hearing input immediately following the public hearing, even before giving reading to the resolution at hand with the Sunnyside properties there. And the other question was, everybody was prepared for a public hearing for the Bellaterra properties, and the only explanation was somebody submitted a written input and then it was withdrawn from the evening's agenda.
So to the first question, okay, first question, Mr. Uvik, and I think Ms. Halliwell has already responded to you in regards to the public hearing process. It's very much a common practice, and as she pointed out to you, even in your last year on council, that's how it was done. The main worry is that we don't want to receive any further information after the public hearing and before we actually as a council debate it. So, and that's also the common practice at Metro Vancouver and all other councils as well. So that's the answer to the first one. The second question is, this was not just a written submission. This was a very technical accumulation of 77 pages of stuff that we received late last night from the Mukel family on Monday evening, including it was some engineering analysis, some legal analysis as well. And as you again, must be well aware, we have several members of our council that work full-time and weren't able to do full diligence before even hearing any comments regarding it. So we have simply delayed that on that aspect.
I'm not clear from your answer how that prevents the remainder of public input on this evening's agenda.
Well, we wouldn't have public input if there were still questions that council needed to be answered before we took to public input. So, okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I now have, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to be going in, I'm just trying to follow the order here. So I have Georgia Lyons.
Hi, can you hear me and see me?
Yeah.
Okay, so this was just basically off of my parents with the garbage bin. And I just have like a slight kind of confusion. My parents got this petition out because they were concerned about the communication, because they didn't hear that on their property or close to their property, the garbage bin would be placed there. It just showed up. And I think that's where they're very like concerned about, is that I think you probably, like someone, I don't know if it's you or Julie maybe, but that should have been like forwarded to them before it was placed there, just because like they weren't really expecting it. And I feel like it's the adjacent property holders, which my dad was saying, they should be informed before that happens. I think that's just like a right that everybody should have. So I think that what they're trying to, I guess, get across is wondering if you could like find a way to like move it that fits your needs and also my parents' needs too, because it's close to their property and they do have the right to complain about something that was put there without their knowledge.
Good.
If that makes any sense.
Thank you very much. I appreciate
Okay.
the comments.
So like,
Yeah.
Is there a solution to this?
I believe there has been one that Ms. Halliwell is going to be following up with your parents.
Okay, so could we get an answer soon, or like even just like plan a meeting?
I think they'll have to coordinate that.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much.
Okay, I have Marilee's iPad.
Hi there. I just want to reference a letter dated May 21, and it was to the editor of the Tri-City News. And it just says, for example, financial studies for Anmore have highlighted that large 1 acre and half-acre lots like we have today are not sustainable for future development, not just from a financial standpoint, but also from a sustainable population standpoint, as young families cannot afford to live here. So my question to council is, what price range do you deem as affordable housing in Anmore?
Good question. I'm going to ask council. Anybody want to venture in on that, or Councillor Weber?
I would say, well, I hate to say it because it's still a big number, anything under $1 million. But, you know, around $800,000 is kind of what the average, basically talking to some of the young people that I work with, you know, 2 people working, that's a mortgage that they could be comfortable with, possibly, you know, in between 800 and $1 million. So just, that's just my opinion.
Thank you.
Councillor Laidler.
Yeah, I support Councillor Weathering's opinion there on 800 to $1 million in this area. If we made smaller units, they could be less, on 500 to 700, but that will be up to the council as a whole and with input from the village.
Good. I saw Councillor Trowbridge.
Yeah, I want to be clear that I am not a real estate expert, so I have to make sure that I'm not speaking with authority. It's my personal opinion, just from observation and young folks I've seen. And I think I agree with the 2 previous councillors. When I look at neighboring communities, condominiums are typically running around $1,000 a foot, and sort of young family size at $1,000 a foot is $1 million. So it's, you know, kind of there. I think though, you know, I want to make sure we don't confuse affordable housing with starter homes necessarily. There is a broad bandwidth of people that need residences and want to have residences that would fit in a price range above that, but it would still be considered what I would term more affordable housing, not specifically affordable.
Good. Good. Thank you. Okay, we'll now move on to Susan iPhone X. And if Marilee and if Mr. Uvik, if you could just lower your hands now so I can kind of keep track of everything. Thank you.
Hi, it's Susan Uckel, 275 Alpine Drive.
Okay.
I was actually, I want to talk about the parking on Alpine on the weekend. I left to go to the grocery store at 7:30 in the morning, and the cars were already lined up past Chestnut Crescent, and everyone is out of their car, standing, talking, drinking coffee, chatting, making a whole bunch of noise. And then when it is time for them to get in their cars, when the lake opens, it's honk, 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 honk. And then if you tried, like when I left, I had to drive, like, because everyone's parked on one side of the street, you have to drive on the oncoming traffic side to get even down to Alpine, like to Sunnyside. I actually ended up turning on Chestnut and coming out at Eagle Crest because I couldn't get past because there was cars coming up Alpine, and they come up part way and then they turn into people's driveway and they line up like the other, on Sunday, they were all the way up to like almost to the top of Alpine Drive. Yeah. And I think that, I know that you guys are talking and looking into it, but I heard someone say, well, they tell you at the lake to go to Alpine and park on Alpine to wait. So whoever BC Hydro has at the gate, they don't let them wait in the turn. They tell them to come to Alpine and wait on Alpine. And so if you're going to do that, I think that you have to have them stop at Chestnut Crescent. But I also think Hydro has to have employees asking people to remain in their cars. It is a residential street. There's a noise bylaw, is there not, that doesn't, like, no noise on a Saturday? I don't know what time that starts at.
Starts at 9 o'clock, goes from 9 till 5. But anyway, I did drive up Alpine, and Alpine is, you're absolutely correct. It is not a very wide road with borders to be able to pull over on. So we are going to be addressing this and working with the RCMP as well as Hydro. So please.
And the other thing is because all the honking is because everyone that waits farther down, like when I went out, people were like pulled over by the village hall and stuff and waiting there, and they booted down Sunnyside as soon as it turned 8 o'clock, and then they get in the lake before all the people that have been waiting in this line. So I think that Hydro has to have someone either at Eagle Crest at Alpine, letting everyone who's been waiting queue into the lake, and then allow everyone else who's just driving at 8 o'clock to get in.
Good. Council shares your concerns, and we are going to be working on it. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have Andrew Simpson. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, my question is related to traffic and development growth. The conversations we've had today just highlight the fact that if you are looking at one proposal of urban development and you're adding a huge number of residents plus cars, how are these vehicles going to transit around in and out of Anmore at this point? The one point I'd like to raise and ask council is, what is their view to opening Bert Flynn Park to this influx of development? How is Ioko Road going to handle that? I think these are really critical issues that really haven't been answered, and they should be answered before developments get started. That's my comment and question.
Good. I can't answer Bert Flynn Park because it's not in Anmore, so I'm sorry. And then traffic, it's certainly something that's going to have to be concerned with. And as I've said to a lot of the people that have had asked me the question, and that, you know, we're getting 1 million cars coming in from every tower that's getting built in Coquitlam and Port Moody that's coming through our community. And, you know, with part of the MRN road network, we get funding for East Road or Sunnyside, because otherwise it'd be a challenge for us to be able to maintain it on our own. And with that funding, we aren't allowed to inhibit any sort of capacity. So yeah, it is a challenge. And I think that I think the majority of the traffic issue though is coming. I think as council did later on, sending a letter to having different forms of transportation, i.e. a bike route may help alleviate some of that, especially with the advent of the electric bike. And as well, being involved with Metro Vancouver Parks, we have been working with TransLink. And so TransLink is serving us fairly well. They've doubled up the full bus service to Bunsen and to Sassament and to Belcarra Lake. So they're doing the best job that they can. And so I think we're going to see some dividends here fairly quickly. Thank you.
But thanks. Just follow up, Mr. McEwen, because if we just even go back to the Burrard Commons proposal, that had a projection of 4,500 residents.
We
coming
never,
into the area.
Mr. Simpson, we never had any sort of projection. There was no development of that. So I'm sorry to cut you off there, but we don't know that's part of the analysis that we're doing in regards to that. We know what the baseline is, and that's with it being zoned RS1 and what can be built there. And we have a couple different projections, and the price of that infrastructure will determine what sort of yield they'll need to get. And at that point, then we'll have to do certain traffic analysis. Councillor Trowbridge.
Yeah, I was just, there's such a misunderstanding around this urban comment that's thrown out all the time. What we're looking for input on, and what we're studying, and what we are at some point going to make a decision on once we have good data and good information, is whether or not to create the designation of urban. It's not to urbanize something. It's not to create a development. It's to create a designation. The designation allows a broad bandwidth of development methodologies. So without a proposal, and there isn't.
Shut you down on Burrard Commons there.
Please mute whoever is muted so we can answer.
Without a proposal in front of us, I just want to be clear. Council is not trying to skirt these questions, but what we see on social media is people throwing out numbers, 3,000 people and all that. They can't possibly know that, because we don't know that. Without a development, nobody knows that. So it's important to understand that I know they're related, but until a proposal comes forward and somebody proposes some form of development, speaking about numbers is a really dangerous situation, because none of us know what those numbers may be. I think from my perspective, and if I don't use the right technical terms, I apologize, but from my perspective, I think when we see a proposal and when we see what's being proposed, if it calls for significant densification in that area, we're certainly going to be looking at traffic volume, traffic patterns, where, and by that I mean patterns of where that traffic is likely to be. We have about 1 million cars coming through our community in a 7-month period going to the lake. The bulk of the congestion, as I see it, because I come in and out of the community most days, is really in and around the lake. And I feel for our neighbors in North Anmore that deal with those lineups, and what Susan was talking about, she's absolutely right. That's inappropriate. But I've never personally experienced any difficulty transiting in and out of the community in what I'll call the South Anmore, where I live, sort of in and out of the community. So that doesn't mean to say we shouldn't be cognizant of making sure we don't overload the MRNs, the municipal road network, but we can't really speak to it when we don't even know what's being proposed. So again, my point is, it's not avoidance. It's simply that we would have to make up facts in the absence of a proposal. No one has the facts, us included. I hope that helps clear things up.
Good, thank you. I have Sherry.
Hello?
Yes.
Hi, this is her daughter, Amber. I live on Crystal Creek Drive. This is for you, Mr. Mayor. Correct me if I'm wrong, but did you threaten the protesters with the RCMP?
No.
Hello? I thought I heard you say that earlier when you were talking about protesters outside of the fire station. And
No,
you
I
said you may
that-
have to get the RCMP involved.
No, not at all. I said when I was talking to Chief Sharp today, he was concerned about the protesters being outside of the volunteer fire hall and not really making sure that they were aware that that was the volunteer fire hall. But he stressed to me quite clearly that it wasn't a great idea to be doing it there because they wanted to keep the area clear for in the event there was some sort of an emergency.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. And now finally we have Doug.
I'm trying to put the camera on.
There you go. That looks good.
Okay, so the first thing is regarding infill. So I have 2 comments and 1 question. Regarding infill, the original tables that were produced by Rollo and Associates were primarily weighted by 1 lot of like 1.5 acres or greater going into 3 lots. That's where the 150K CAC came from. So to now say that it was only intended for 1 into 2 is false based on everything that was presented by staff during all those discussions. Second more, Jason Smith specifically answered in a meeting in a public forum that if you had 2 acres, you were allowed, as long as you met the density, to use infill to go to 4 lots. So I suggest you go back and look at the history of the 150K CAC, because it's primarily weighted by 1 acre or 1.5 acre into 3 lots. And if you only do 1 into 2, then I think the CAC comes out to like 57K or something like that. That's 1. 2, with respect to Cordovato, the land given up is not part of the CAC. The CAC is based on the lift, 50% of the lift, from what you would get in RS1 to what you would get in CD. And in Cordovato, it's either 10 or 11 RS1 lots to 19 lots. So the CAC should be based on the same sort of level as everything else. The land doesn't count based on everything you said. So my question is, because it's to do with trees, why do some subdivisions have to have a complete survey of every frickin' tree on their lot, which is hugely expensive? For me, it was around $6,000 for 3 acres. And Bellaterra didn't have to have any tree survey. Cordovato doesn't have to have any tree survey. 231 Strong Road for infill had to have a tree survey. For the Village Hall cutting down trees, there was a tree survey. So who has to do it and who doesn't? Because it's a big expense and it's not consistent and it's completely unfair.
Mr. Boyd, are you able to answer any of those questions?
Yeah, I think I can answer part of it. Sorry, I've been told my mic isn't working very well, so if you can't hear me.
It sounds better now. It sounds better now.
Okay. So Mr. Richardson is right. There is a tree bylaw and there is a specific part within the bylaw with regards to the subdivision. And it's kind of a bit of in depth, but as I don't want to talk about what's happened in the past, but as my watch as development manager servicer, I'll be reviewing any application, making sure it's in accordance with any of the existing bylaws that are in place and ensuring that the proponents meet those requirements on subdivision bylaw, the tree retention bylaw, any of these bylaws that come, a development comes forward with, they must comply with the existing bylaw. That's the law of the land. So I will comment on anything that comes forward here. It will have to be in compliance with these subdivisions and provincial and federal regulations when it comes to that matter with regards to environmental protection acts and what have you. So that, I don't know if that really answers Doug's question there or not.
Okay, so Mr. Boyd, if you can send me the tree survey for the entire 13 acres of the Cordovato subdivision CD zone proposal, I would appreciate it, because I've gone in there. There are no tags on trees. Likewise, in Bellaterra, there are no tags on trees.
You are correct. At this moment in time, they are not required to have a tree survey. However, at subdivision, they will be required. So the next step, they will be required to go in and tag the trees in accordance with the caliper size of the trees, the diameter of the tree, and make sure they're tagged and in accordance. And then a plan will be developed to show which ones they wish to remove and make sure that there's a certain amount of retention left on each lot. And then where trees are removed, they'll need to provide a planting plan to show the replacement or whatever tree that will be removed. It's roughly 3 to 1, I think it is off the top of my head.
So why are there no tags on any trees in Bellaterra?
Because I don't know, it's like phase 1 has been subdivided already, and when phase 2
there's no tags.
But again, phase 2 hasn't come forward for subdivision yet.
It's already subdivided. It has come forward to subdivision.
Mr. Doug, you're going to have to let Chris finish, please. And I can tell you that as he's trying to say, phase 2 has not been subdivided yet. So I think that is what he's saying. I've got Councillor Trowbridge.
Yeah, we can go back and check the records, I'm sure, and we should. But I recall in Bellaterra was a long protracted thing. It took like 3 years as I recall. But it's my understanding that Bellaterra was required at subdivision on phase 1 to do a tree survey. It's entirely possible. And again, we'd have to check the records. I'm not going to swear to this because I haven't walked the property recently or anything like that. But it's entirely possible that the tagged trees have been removed. So I'm pretty sure we're going to find, and Julia and Karen, I'll leave it to you guys to search that up, but I'm pretty sure you're going to find that that was the practice back then as well for phase 1.
If you walk into that subdivision and you go to a big tree, the old bylaw was 10 centimeters. The new bylaw is 20 centimeters. There are no trees with any tags at all. So you can go back and look, but the trees weren't surveyed.
Doug, I believe that the trees that were tagged have been taken down and the trees left were not tagged.
I think we'll have to get back to Doug in regards to this. So, and also we will get back to the regarding the JP Rollo report, because I'm curious to reread that and just to have a clarification on that. So, Sherry, we have Sherry back, and then that will be the end of our thing.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. This is Sherry from Crystal Creek Drive.
Could you give us your exact address, please, Sherry?
1483 Crystal Creek Drive. I just have a question. What does the council deem as responsible growth in numbers of new citizens moving to Anmore Village, let's say for a 1-year period?
I personally couldn't answer that. I have no idea.
So it's not something that was talked about where council perhaps has a number, like maybe 10 or 100 in a year?
Sorry.
No? Would any of the other council members have a comment at all?
Oh, I got Councillor Wevering.
Okay.
I think if you go back into our financial analysis, there was some projections there, and it does talk about it in our OCP. The gray area was always the IOCO lands. So really, we don't really know. It really is about what does our community need and what population we would have to meet those needs, provided that everybody agreed to those needs. And this is going to be a long conversation. This was one of the first things I spoke about when I ran for council 7 years ago, is that nobody was talking about the IOCO lands. And I think it's interesting to note that with this designation of special study area, nobody knew what that meant. And what ended up happening is a developer said, well, what it means to me is a bunch of condos. And people are wondering why that was pulled. Well, I think we saw the writing on the wall that there wasn't anybody in Anmore that was going to support a development to that magnitude. So it's a fair question, but it really needs a lot more discussion. I think it's pretty easy to determine based on development patterns in Anmore. The main part of Anmore, we have fairly defined development patterns, RS1 or CD. That's really about it. And I don't think there's any appetite to change that. But the Ioko lands needs to be discussed. It needs a lot of community input, and we need, I mean, we could all give you our vision of what we see as a suitable development there, but vision is just a vision. It means nothing if it's not supported by the community.
Okay.
Yep,
And I've got Councillor Trowbridge wants to just add a few more comments.
Yeah, just I'll try and make it quick. We can't answer about how many per year, like 10 or 5 or 20 or whatever. My recollection is that there was a projected essentially doubling of the population over a protracted period of time. And I can't recall, don't pin me to it, but this is from like 5, 6 years ago. There was some projected growth and so on. But the reason that an annual rate can't be predicted is because it has to do with building permits, people deciding to move here, people buying, not buying. Bellaterra is a good case in point. When that was brought before us, it was a very hot real estate market. We dragged the developer out for a very long time to get the things we wanted. And unfortunately, as cycles happen, Bellaterra actually came online in a down market, and that development has not come close to being built out. So it's virtually impossible to say what the annual growth rate should be. That's why we had some numbers over long periods of time. Annually, not a realistic way to view it.
Okay. Good. Thanks. I've got a couple more people. Mr. Lyons, do you have anything new to add, or I'm just going to move on because I need to move on? Mr. Lyons,
yes,
do you have
I do,
anything new to add
actually,
to the discussion?
Yes, Mayor. This is regarding something different. I've been listening to Doug talk about the arborists and the bylaws, the tree bylaws, and I too am confused. So I can see where Doug is coming from on this. There was a arborist report done on 85 Elementary Road, and a permit issued to the people that are building a house there. There were approximately 70 tags on the trees, and the permit allowed for 26 trees to be removed. I'm wondering what happened to the other 40 trees, and how do you hold people accountable for that?
I would have to get back to you. I know nothing of this situation. I'm sorry. So I guess Mr. Boyd will just make note of that. So
I just want to point out that I talked to Martin, and he didn't seem too interested in discussing it with me. And I'm a little concerned about accountability at City Hall right now.
Okay, well, that's fair enough. Thank you very much.
I have one other thing I'd like to talk about. I've also listened to people talk tonight, and I've gained some more information on this urban versus rural for Anmore South. And I just finished talking to 30 people on our street, and there was no appetite for going to urban in Anmore South. And now I see protests all over the place. I'm wondering whether council should be going to referendum on this instead of spending money on reports after reports after reports.
Well, you would think that reports are going to give people a better education as to what they want to vote on. So I think a lot of people have asked that. Please don't interrupt me, Mr. Lyons. Please I let you finish. So
okay, go ahead.
The reports are what we've been asked by a lot of the residents as to the financial sustainability. And the interesting thing is, I remember talking to you one-on-one, and you had a great concern about your tax rate and how the fact that you were concerned about the runaway expenses that were going on at the Village Hall about 3 years ago when I met you in your driveway. So, all of this, with the community being as small as we are, we have to very much worry about the financial viability of us moving forward.
Well, I don't remember that conversation, to be honest with you. You've got a very good memory. But there's no evidence that densification results in sustainability. In fact, just the opposite. The more development you have, usually your taxes have to go up in order to service that development over the years. And that requires more development. That's the general rule of thumb.
Yeah, I would suggest that you have a look at the Van Struth financial analysis, which was done, I guess, about 7 or 8 years ago, which people have referenced during this discussion that we're having. And again, I just want to reemphasize, this is a discussion. We have 150 acres here that we don't know really what we want to do. We want to hear from the people, and that's all we've sort of started the conversation with. But one of the things that we heard back because of the Van Struth report, which was done about 7 years ago, is it needs to be updated. So that's what we're proposing to do, and that. But again, the discussion about Anmore South, that's what we want to have. We want to have discussion. We want to hear from a lot of people about what they propose or what we have. We have a unique opportunity to do something special there that would have minimal effect on the rest of Anmore, although some could argue that the traffic would have an impact and also the infrastructure would. But those are all things that are going to be done in the financial analysis. So I thank you for your comments.
Well, there is no way we can get traffic in here to sustain a urban development, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. But I still don't understand why you just don't take it to referendum, find out what the people think.
We very well want to do that. Might do that. So thank you very much. I just wanted to say we've got 2 minutes. So I want to just move on to a few other people.
Sure. Thank you for comments, Mayor.
Okay. I have iPhone Stefan Michelle. One more time, and then iPhone Stefan Michelle. Okay, I'm going to then move adjournment. Someone to move adjournment? Moved, seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you, everybody, for coming out, and thank you for the great conversations.